How you doing, everybody? It's Greg Wittstock, the pond guy. I'm out rebuilding a pond, and I heard from Brian, and he said to me, hey, record a little opening about your event that you're going to be doing at LAL 2021. So I'm going to be there in November. I'm excited. It's been a crazy year. We've been building ponds like crazy. If you're in this industry, you have been going crazy with people improving their homes. But anyway, I missed last year. I'm super excited to get back together with people. I'm not used to doing that with big groups, and Brian does a great job. So if you're not registered for LAL 2021, register. I'm going to be there talking about building a team. I got 130 teammates with me. I still get my hands out. I still got my hands dirty out in the field with these guys, but I'm excited to be in a room learning, because when you stop learning, you stop earning. LAL 2021, I'll see you guys there. I love my job.
You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. It's your host, Brian Fullerton. And today, guys, we're going to be doing something a little bit different today on this episode. I think you guys will really enjoy it. Here's what we're going to do. On Fridays, I want to kind of change it up a little bit on the podcast and maybe give you guys the opportunity to check out some other great folks in the industry that have other great podcasts out there. So many of you guys really enjoy listening to our show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And here's the deal. I wanted to just to change it up a little bit. I don't want things to get monotonous or mundane with anything that we're doing ever. I like to keep things fresh, keep it spicy so you guys can learn some new things and sometimes even get different people's perspective. Well, here's what we're going to do. On Fridays for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I wanted to try something different. And by the way, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. So if you want to shoot me a message on Instagram or shoot me an email or leave us a rating or review, always appreciate the feedback. But I want to volley the show to some of our other friends in the industry, and we're going to do a Feature Friday. Long story short, I want to give these guys the opportunity to. I told them, hey, don't necessarily teach them all the X's and O's and everything you did right. I said, let's keep it light. I said, we're going into the dog days of summer. We're going into fall. We're trying to keep motivated. I said, maybe share with these guys some of your biggest mistakes. How about that? Would that not be fun? So I said, hey, look, we're all teaching what to do right. And a lot of our businesses are growing. We're making more money. Things are going great, right? Well, instead, I said, let's talk about some of the past mistakes and blunders that we've all made. Lord knows I've made a bunch of them myself. And let's just keep it light. Let's keep it fun. It's Friday. Usually we're finishing up the work week. Or if you're a part of our Weekend Warrior fans and friends that are out there cutting grass Saturdays and Sundays, always pulling for you guys that the weather holds off and you guys can get your lawns done as well. So that's what we're going to do. For the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to be doing a Feature Friday, and we're going to have, I think, Paul Jamison, Caleb Ullman, Lawn Care Business Success Julio, Jeremiah Jennings with Growing Green, a bunch of different guys. We're going to have them do a little podcast takeover on Friday for the next few weeks. Now, I'll be here to ad-lib a little bit just to give you guys some updates and highlights and some different things that are coming down the pike just so we can make sure we're on top of it. I think today's episode, we're actually going to be kicking it over to Mr. Paul Jamison with the Green Industry Podcast, which, by the way, by the time this episode comes out, he will already have his new book released, and I'm sure he can tell you a little bit more about those details and fill you guys in. So, guys, without further ado, I just want to say thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for listening to the show. Hopefully, we're just trying to keep it fresh for you guys, kind of change it up a little bit. I think you'll really enjoy these next few weeks on Fridays. We'll always be back here once a week with a solo episode and once a week with a guest interview as well. But these guys are going to help me kind of quarterback the show a little bit while I'm handling the new baby. Life as a new dad, and it really helps just kind of take a little bit of my workload off as well, just to be transparent. So how about that? All right. One other thing I want to say really quick, that we're going to be kicking this over to Marty, Mr. Producer, to talk about the show sponsors and announcements, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you guys that have been supporting the show. Things are growing like crazy. Also, thank you to all of you guys that have been getting your Launchpreneur Academy live tickets. We're at about 120 plus registrations already. The goal is 300. Things are selling fast. So thank you to all of you guys that just went out there on faith. You were bold. You guys are making the decision to come, and then you're going to figure out the details along the way. You can get your tickets at launchpreneuracademy.com. I'm not going to overhype the event. If you've been there before, you know that it's worth every bit of the $200 ticket price. If you've never been, I just challenge you to make a decision to come on down. I think you guys will be handsomely rewarded for your faith in coming to check out this conference, which is in Novi, Michigan, November 13th on a Saturday. Absolutely worth the drive, the flight, the hotels, the food. It's going to be so much fun. All right. So we really hope to see you guys there. Help us fill that room if you guys can. We really are just looking forward to helping you guys transform and turbocharge your business as we go into 2022. All right. Well, that's what I got for today. We're going to kick it over to Marty, Mr. Producer, hear a little bit more about today's show sponsors, show announcements, and everything going on in our ecosystem. And then we're going to hear a little bit more today from Paul Jamison.
We want to thank the lawn and landscape community for making GIE Plus Expo their place to reunite as an industry. Like a family reunion, thousands of dealers, landscape pros, and contractors return annually to network, share ideas, learn best practices, and make new friends. It all starts Wednesday, October 20th with the opening reception and continues into the night with free concerts in downtown Louisville. At the show, you'll have the opportunity to share experiences and brainstorm new approaches to your business challenges with friends and like-minded professionals. You don't want to miss the opening keynote, Secrets of Being an Effective Leader, presented by retired Navy 4-star Admiral James Stavridis. Register now at GIE-Expo.com, and we'll see you October 20th through the 22nd in Louisville.
When you're signing up for GIE, remember to use that special promo code BRIAN. That saves you 50% off your registration price. And now, back to Fullerton Unfiltered.
Hey guys, welcome to Atlanta, Georgia. I am Paul Jamison down here in the ATL. I share the same podcast producer as Mr. Fullerton, Mr. Producer. And this morning I was driving to Target, do a little grocery shopping, and Brian calls me and asked me if I would be a guest on his podcast and share the two biggest mistakes that I have made in my business journey. And I was flattered, you know. It's not like he's like, hey, share your championship success, triumphant stories. Like, share your failures. So, unfortunately, I have a big Rolodex to select from. And I wanted to share two stories today that I think will be very humorous. And at the moment, they were not humorous. They were actually very, very painful, but a lot of time has passed, and I think there's some principles to learn from my mistakes. So in context to the first story, back in 2011, I was broke, busted, and disgusted, could not be trusted, brand new in business, did not know what I was doing. And I wasn't even at Chuck in the Truck status. I had a Honda Accord 97. It was raggedy. I had one piece of equipment. It wasn't even mine. It was my buddy's that was in his garage that I was living at his house. I didn't even ask him if I could use his lawnmower. I just took it. One of those things. It's like, well, if he finds out, I'll just apologize. So like I said, I was broke. I needed to make some money. And so I folded up this mower, put it in the trunk, and had another friend who let me borrow his handheld steel blower and a weed eater that I could put diagonally in the back seat behind the driver's seat, and then put it so, it would go diagonal into the passenger seat up front. And then I'd have to put the window down for the head of the weed eater to stick out the window, and then it would fit. So that was my setup. I was not even close to being a Chuck in the Truck. I was a Rhonda in the Honda. Well, I guess that doesn't make any sense. I'm a man, but I don't have anything that rhymes with Honda. Mr. Producer, if you got something, let me know. But it was raggedy status, to say the least. And so I started cutting that grass, making that cash as a part-time side hustle, 2011, 12, 13. And I was also working jobs as a server at Carrabba's restaurant. I was a radio on-air personality here in Atlanta. That's actually how I met Mr. Producer. And my schedule for that was 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I wasn't able to work during prime time Monday through Friday when most people get the bulk of their landscaping services completed. But I'm in a huge predicament because that time is tied up for a job where I was an employee. In addition to that, it was about an hour commute from where I live to get to the radio station. So I'd leave at 9 a.m. I want to get back home till 3 p.m. So it left me the evenings and Saturdays to get my lawn care work done. Well, eventually the demand to provide lawn care service was so extravagant. Just so many people were asking me to do landscaping projects, to cut their grass and things of that nature, that eventually I had to sit in the general manager's office at the radio station and basically put in my resignation because I couldn't keep up with all of it. And he actually came to a nice solution and was like, well, why don't we just have you work on the weekends and then you can do your lawn care during the week? And so that's what I did for years. I worked Monday through Friday in landscaping and then on the weekends in radio. So long story short, it was my first month after basically removing the radio gig out of my daily routine. And so now I had 5 days a week to work. And what was happening, I was turning down all of these requests for people asking me to do, I mean, these were big jobs, five-digit jobs, big remodels. And I'm telling no. And I'm sitting in a radio station making, barely over minimum wage. And finally I started doing some calculations. I'm like, okay, I got to get out there and hustle and do the landscaping. So now I turned the switch on and I started saying yes to all these inquiries of people asking me to do work for them, and I'm not vetting my customers. So long story short, I commit to a $17,500 backyard remodel. We did like 12 or so pallets of sod, some steps. We did a big old project, and it was very time consuming. And I didn't know that these customers were very PETA customers or detail oriented, if you know what I'm saying. And so that was really challenging. Well, in addition to that, I started taking on more maintenance customers. And I started putting on the back burners the customers that I had for years. I started neglecting their properties, and just a little bit here, bushes would get a little overgrown here. We just start passing up on our attention to detail because we were so rushed. And it was never my intention to neglect customers like that, but I was stretched thin. And so Jim Collins writes in his book, Good to Great, you want to have the right people on the bus and in the right seats. Well, I wasn't thinking about that too much. I was thinking, I need somebody to help me with, put the sod in. I need someone to help me mow. I just need help because there's no possible way one person could have handled the workload that I have. And so I just started going through my phone, just texting people, calling people, like, hey, bro, can you come work with me? Can you come work with me? So finally, after a lot of people said no, finally, one of my friends was like, yeah, man, I can come, I can do that, but you got to come pick me up, man, because I don't, this guy had legal issues and no vehicle and, no license to drive and stuff like that. So he's like, will you come pick me up? And I was like thinking, I didn't even bring it by my mentors because they would have told me, HELL, no, you don't go pick up your employee, especially when he lives far away. Like, they gotta have enough responsibility to be able to arrive to the job, right? So anyway, I'm broke, busted, and disgusted. I got to get it done. So I go and I pick him up and we go and we work and we are so far behind, guys. I mean, I got my phone is just blowing up with calls and texts and, hey, when are you going to get this done? When are you going to get that done? And thankfully I had built up so much credibility with these people over, 3-4 years that they knew I'm responsible to some degree and I'm going to get it done. And they were giving me a lot of grace, but it was out of control. And so where the story's going is one day we're out on a property doing maintenance and the employee, he gets so mad. It's, it's like 95 degrees, real field nailer of a 107 in Atlanta. It's the summer and he's trimming the bush and he just kind of has this bad attitude. And he just starts walking to the truck and I'm thinking, we got to get going here. What's he doing going to the truck? And he just starts kind of undoing himself. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, I quit. He's like, take me home. And I was like, let's go to the bank, get me my money for the week, pay me and take me home. And I'm sitting there thinking, you want to quit in the middle of the day. You want me to go take you to the bank and then take you home and then come back and work. And he's like, yeah, let's get going. Now, this is Fullerton, you asked for it. You asked for my biggest mistake. So what would you guys do in this situation? The guy quits in the middle of the day. You got all this work to do. And I foolishly get in the truck. We drive to the bank. I pull out money. I pay him. I drive him all the way across town, take him home. By this time, it's late in the afternoon now. I got to go back and try to bang out a few more for the rest of the day. And so this was a wake-up call for me. It was kind of one of those moments where you hit rock bottom in life because now I lost the guy that was working with me on the reg, and now I'm back to being solo, and I have this $17,500 job actually turned out to be more because they were adding on as we're going along. I got all my maintenance work, and things were just crumbling. My prices weren't the right price, so even though I had a bunch of work and turning tens of thousands in revenue, the profit was bare minimum, if anything, because there was just sloppiness. And long story short, that's a big mistake that I made. I did not have organization in my business. I'm not even blaming the employee. I should have never, committed to that. It wasn't his fault. It was my fault. I was disorganized, and I didn't have the right foundation to bring the right people on the bus and put them in the right places. And so in no way am I throwing shade on somebody else. The problem was with the man in the mirror, me, myself, and I. And so thankfully, shortly after that, I met Caleb Allman. I met Naylor Taliaferro, John Pajak, Brian Ring, Rich, and Jamie and Derek, and all these people that eventually are professionals, and they started to show me the ropes. Like, Paul, you got to get your stuff in order, and this isn't weekend warrior mode anymore. This isn't Chuck in the truck. Like, you're running a legitimate business. You have potential, but you really got to get things in order. And so I did, and I really started to vet customers better. That was one takeaway, because I was overcommitting, and in hindsight, I was taking on not just too much volume, but I was taking on the wrong customers. So I got better at vetting customers. So I didn't take on PETA clients, and I didn't, make these claims where, we'll be there Thursday, thinking, how in the world are we going to be there Thursday? Because we have all this other stuff to do. And I was more honest and transparent with customers, like, hey, probably going to be 2 or 3 weeks at best until we can get to your job, and things of that nature. So that was my lesson learned from the guy quitting in the middle of the day, me taking him to the bank, paying him, and giving him a ride home.
Mr. Producer said to tell you that the show continues after a word from our sponsor.
We want to thank the lawn and landscape community for making GIE Plus Expo their place to reunite as an industry. Like a family reunion, thousands of dealers, landscape pros, and contractors return annually to network, share ideas, learn best practices, and make new friends. It all starts Wednesday, October 20th with the opening reception and continues into the night with free concerts in downtown Louisville. At the show, you'll have the opportunity to share experiences and brainstorm new approaches to your business challenges with friends and like-minded professionals. You don't want to miss the opening keynote, Secrets of Being an Effective Leader, presented by retired Navy 4-star Admiral James Stavridis. Register now at GIE-expo.com, and we'll see you October 20th through the 22nd in Louisville.
You know why your back hurts and your posture sucks? Because you don't have Darwin's grip for your trimmer. Now you can stand up straight, reducing fatigue and strains, and even achieve precise trimming by getting you closer to the line. Save 10% with Brian's 10 at darwinsgrip.com.
All right. Well, I want to share a second story that actually happened in the history of a timeline before the story that I just shared. And there's some very valuable lessons to learn from these major mistakes that I made. So in context, I'm working Monday through Friday at a radio station, and I'm hustling in the evenings to get work done. And then Saturdays is my game day. My buddy Robert would work with me. He had a full-time job during the week, but Saturdays I would pray my heart out that it wouldn't rain, and we would bang out so much work. Actually, would have to work at the radio station at 6 p.m., but we'd get started at 8, work till about 4:45, and we would bang out work. And so Robert was actually fresh out of prison. And so he was in this house where a whole bunch of guys that were in the same life situation as him would stay, and they'd really try to stabilize their life. They had accountability and, try to work through their parole system, and then eventually, get back into society and be free and things of that nature. And Robert's actually, to this day, he's done really well. He got married and has some kids now, and making good money and making wise decisions in his life. And he's got a really cool story, and I stay in touch with him, and he did a fantastic job for me on Saturdays. So we banged out this sod job, and beautiful. Zoysia sod looked fantastic. And of course, the neighbors are taking notice, and a few other folks are asking for quotes. And I don't really have my pricing down too much yet on sod, but the one guy didn't want just sod. He also wanted, a flagstone pathway, some mulch, some boulders, some trees. This guy wanted like a remodel. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I've done mulch before. I've done flagstone pathways before. I've done trees. I've done plants. Of course, I've done sod. I was like, all this stuff I'm comfortable doing, but I'm adding it all up on the invoice, which my prices were way too low as is. and I'm getting close to $15,000. Well, I never did a $15,000 job before. I think like 3 or 4,000, that was kind of my biggest job at this point. I'm brand new in business, and here I am making barely over minimum wage at a job, and I'm giving a guy a quote for almost $15,000. And I didn't know to do a third down, third on when we start third on completion, but I just tell him 50% deposit, 50% on completion. Here's the quote, and the guy says, "Let's rock and roll." And I didn't really think, well, how are we going to get this done? Because I only have Saturdays. And so I'm talking to Robert. I was like, man, can you take a day off work, or like, can you do something? Can you help me out here? Because I got this huge job. It's kind of one of those things like, I'll get the job and I'll figure it out later. And so long story short, he's like, well, my buddy Anthony, he ain't doing much. He's at the house. He can help out. And his cousin Pookie, and he's got a few guys. He's like, puts together this team. He's like, they can grade one day and do the mulch one day and do the sod one day. They'll take care of everything. And so I'm like, all right. Well, like the customer, and this was not his fault. This was my fault. He was asking, were you going to put screen topsoil in? I was like, well, yeah, this area here, we'll put a little screen topsoil in before we put the sod down. Because this one area really needed graded to be smooth, and it was a mess. But for the rest of the property, I was just planning on rototilling it, because you got all this soft Georgia clay and the sod. I've done a lot of sod. It will take root in Georgia clay all day. And so you can bring screen topsoil in, but I'm telling you, the root will go into the Georgia clay just fine, take root and be lush grass. I've seen it time and time again. And I didn't explain all this to the customer, but he was asking screen topsoil. I was like, yeah, we'll do a little bit here. So one day I drop off the guys at 8 a.m. Now, I drive an hour to go make just over minimum wage at the radio. I mean, it's more than that, but I'm being sarcastic. But you know what I'm saying. I'm paying out, $70 or whatever an hour, not to just one guy, but if you had the various guys, while I'm making less than that as an employee, and I got these guys out working for me, but they're not fully trained. And again, I didn't have the right people on the bus and things of that nature. And so they call me, we got 10 pallets of sod out there. And the customer starts complaining, you didn't put screen topsoil down here. And I'm like, well, we put it down in the area that really needed graded, but we're just rototilled the rest of it because no, you got to put screen topsoil down. And so I was like, oh man. So now I can't, he doesn't want the guys to put the sod down because he wants the screen topsoil down first. I'm stuck at work. And so literally, and I dropped them off, so they literally have nothing to do because I had to put in an order to get new screen topsoil. My truck was with me, and it couldn't get delivered in time until the next day. It was a mess. So I was able to get a little bit of it that afternoon. But long story short, these guys just sat around for hours while I'm at work. They have nothing to do. And eventually I asked my boss, I was like, hey, can I take some time off and go and I got to go finish this job. He's like, nope, you're committed to work here. You got to work here. So I'm sitting there burning money while these guys are sitting around just playing on their phones, and super unprofessional to the customer. He's looking out his window and there's Pookie, and Anthony, these guys are just playing on their phone, goofing off for hours and hours. And he's, the customer's mad at me. Financially, I'm losing, I'm burning money as each hour passes. I'm just paying out money for no productivity. And eventually I go, I take the guys home from the day, I get some screen topsoil, and then the next day it rains, right? It rains. So now we got piles of sod, pallets of sod sitting there, and it was a disaster. So finally we get the screen topsoil down. Lesson learned for me, be more clear in the expectations with the customer. We get the sod down and it looks great. We roll this stuff. It's zoysia looking great. And I drive by every now and again, but again, I'm working at the radio station. And I was like, man, sod's starting to look a little dry. You know what I mean? And the customer wasn't watering it as necessary. And so it just was starting to look real dry, actually. And the next thing you know, it goes dormant. We get into fall temperatures and everything goes dormant. So little did I know, the grass was actually stressed and dying, but you couldn't tell because all the other grasses were dormant, and I was still a rookie enough to not really, really, really know. I was just hoping, well, I think it's going to be all right in the spring. So spring comes up, and the grass didn't make it. Okay, and customers calling me, hey, when the grass going to green up? And it's like, well, May usually greens up. Well, look, it's still brown. It's still tan. Guy's got a little bit of a mouth on him. What's going on here? And so, he's like, you got to come out and resod this. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm running the numbers, how many pallets of sod? It's thousands and thousands of dollars in material. And I didn't have a contract with them. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, you didn't water it. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't make it, not because when we put it in, it was lush green and it was rolled and it was rooting. Everything was good to go. But friends, I did not have contract with him that we are not warranting the sod. I did not communicate that to him. So that I'm giving you the lesson learned right now. I should have looked him in the eye and said, listen, and I've done this since that day. Every time I look him in the eye and I say, listen, it's hot in Georgia. You have to water it every single day. I'll give you exact watering instructions. You cannot try to be cheap. You have to water it every single day and keep those roots moist so it takes root. And we're not responsible. I'll take pictures. Everything when it goes in, it will be lush green. Every single piece of sod will be green. It will be healthy. You're responsible after that point. So I did not have this conversation with the guy. The county that we did the sod in, they'll actually reimburse you one time per year if you have a sod or you fill up your pool and you have that, spiked up water bill. You pay $200 a month or $100 a month for your water bill, and then all of a sudden it's $1,000. They'll actually reimburse you that month back to the regular rate. So, and I didn't know that either because I could have told him that, like, you don't have to be cheap on the water bill. They'll actually reimburse you. Water it well. Well, he doesn't water it to standards. He's coming back to me now in the spring. So I'm in the spring rush. This is a new year now. I'm still a rookie in business, but I'm right rookie. I'm year 3 or 4, whatever, but I'm still understanding spring rush is cray cray, like phone's ringing off the hook. And all I really have is evenings and Saturdays. So my spring rush is already basically booked. And here I am going back, pulling up the dead grass, hauling that away, putting in new sod. Well, we put it all in. I lost thousands and thousands of dollars, which, like I mentioned in the previous story, I was broke, busted, and disgusted. All right, I'm fresh out of college, a few years out of college. I hadn't really been making serious money yet, and I'm just robbing Peter to pay Paul. It is what it is. That was life over 10 years ago. And so to spend out thousands of dollars in material, and while the opportunity cost is I have all these customers wanting to pay me money and I barely have any time because I'm working a job. Life was a mess. So we put the sod in. He's furious. You know what I mean? He's furious. He's blaming me, not looking in the mirror like, hey buddy, you didn't water the sod. So this is a drought. Okay. I've lived in Georgia for 15, 16 years, and we've only had really one serious drought since I've lived here. And this was the time of the drought. So we put the new sod in, and it does not get watered appropriately. Again, we are in a drought, and by the end of the summer, the majority of the lawn didn't make it. Guys, this is a third time now. The customer comes back to me. You thought he was irate the first time. Now, the whole year's passed now. He spent his 14, 15 grand, and his grass is still brown. And he's calling me, when are you going to come fix this? I paid you all this money. My grass still looks like beepity beeping. I'm like, oh my God. And at this point, he's got me, by the, what, because I didn't have it in writing. I didn't explain to him, you are responsible to water. So he's 0 for 2 on watering. So now I go through this a third time. Again, thousands and thousands of dollars. I got to rip up all the dead grass for second time, but now I put it in for a third time. And at this time I'm getting serious with him. I'm like, listen, you have to water the grass now. And he finally kind of came, I think he realized it was his fault all along. But anyway, I'm the one that got cut, had to cut the losses and pay for the sod 3 times, guys. I bought that sod. I bought that man's grass 3 times. And we're putting it in. This is a year later now. And emotionally, the moments that I was spending as we're putting the finishing touches on putting that sod in for a third time, it built a maturity in me as a business owner, because it was one of those moments where I had that I have had it moment. This is never happening again. And so what I learned from that in the moments of those pain was effective communication. And I can honestly say from that point forward, I was so honest and direct with future customers, especially when it comes to sod, that listen, guys, we live in Georgia. You're responsible for the water. I had it in writing. I mean, I had a serious tone. I was tact and professional, but I had a serious tone when I looked them in the eye and let them know we are not responsible. You are responsible to water. And I never had a problem since then. And it was me communicating clearly and them, kind of putting the fear of God in them, if you know what I'm saying. Like, oh, yeah, we understand. We'll water. And I would give them the information of how to go through the progression to get their water bill repaid. Because it is going to be $1,000 or more water bill if you water as needed. It's 92 degrees out there. You got to water your sod. So that's the lesson that I learned, was to communicate better with warranties, with expectation. Of course, I cleaned up my schedule. I was stretched thin, and I had the boat close to the dock. I just didn't jump soon enough. It is what it is. I had such a broadcasting dream, and I didn't know the Lord's plan that one day I would have a podcast, because I love broadcasting. It was so hard for me to walk away from a primetime, Atlanta radio show, because to go cut grass in the heat, it was like I felt like I was giving away my dream to go make $1. And I think that's why I held on to the radio job for so long. But in hindsight, I met Mr. Producer, and it all worked out to my good, to God's glory in hindsight. But in the moment, and if guys are listening and you got that part-time job or full-time job and you're trying to do your lawn care business on the side, for a lot of folks, as soon as you get that boat close to the dock, go all in on your business. Because once I did, that first month or two when the guy quit and I took him to the bank and paid him and all that, that was a rough initiation into the full-time lawn care. But once I went full-time, then I never looked back, because I really got everything in order. And so having my schedule stretched thin was another lesson that I learned. And be careful, though. I know Brian does coaching calls. I do coaching calls. Every situation has so many different variables, depending on how much your household income is. Does your wife work? How many kids do you have? How much debt do you have? I mean, I could go through the list. So there's not a cookie cutter answer, but getting the boat close to the dock and jumping is typically a good rule of thumb. And then lastly, getting the right people on the bus. So, Anthony and cousin Pookie, who are fresh out of prison, although sometimes that works out. In the case of Robert, he was a fantastic worker, and I wish I would have gotten him full time. He was working in an electrical job during the week, and they were paying him great benefits, and he's off to the races in life. He's really turned the corner. But I say all that to say, Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, so great, if you will, because it talks about getting the right people on the bus. And at the moment, I was so hyper-focused on just getting the work done. I wasn't thinking long-term. What's the right foundation? What's the right people? Because if I have the right people on the bus and the right seats, then this machine can really build something special. And so I say all that to say, get the right people on the bus, get the right margin in your life, charge the right prices, communicate effectively. So hope that helps you, Fullerton. I know he's busy with the baby girl, and glad everything's going well up there in Fullerton's world. Appreciate him letting me be on the podcast today. And last but not least, this has been book launch week for Mr. Producer and myself, as we have a brand new book out. It's called Best Business Practices for Landscapers. It's wisdom from leaders in the green industry. And so this is a sequel to my first book I wrote, Cut That Grass and Make That Cash. And Mr. Producer helped edit that book for me and really helped me with the project. And so after he wrote that book, which was my story, the first book was my story of building a lawn care business, and then the mistakes I made and the lessons I learned along the way, and how to kind of properly build the business based off of my experience in the School of Hard Knocks, I wrote a separate second book that is completely different, because this book focuses on others' successes. And so we talk about the folks like Troy Quagg and Andy Mulder and Caleb Allman, and just businesses that are crushing it. How did they get to that point? And obviously they had failures too. They had lessons learned along the way. And so I kind of summarized and recapped their best practices, meaning what are they doing well, and how can we emulate that in our businesses so that we can be as profitable and as successful and accelerate the process, that we don't have to keep stumbling and fumbling and making the same mistake again and again, but we can look at others who are further ahead of us, kind of like Isaac Newton said, standing on the shoulders of giants, we can see further. And so I highlight a lot of successful businesses, the best practices that they're doing, and then the wisdom that they're putting out on my podcast. I have over 500 podcast episodes. And so it would take weeks and weeks and weeks, probably months, to binge, if you just start at episode 1 and binge listen to all 500 episodes. So what I try to do with this book is to provide a very clear, concise summary of those kind of highlight moments, those impactful business nuggets, and compile them all into a book. And so the book's called Best Business Practices for Landscapers, and it's available on Amazon. So you can get a copy of that on Amazon. You got Amazon Prime. It's going to be at your front door real fast. And so definitely think you'll find value in my new book, Best Business Practices for Landscapers. So in the words of Brian Fullerton, I think that about buttoned things up. And so I listen to Brian, and then what happens on my show, I just start saying the things he starts saying. So I'll start saying, lay of the land. Today's going to be a short and sweet episode. Let's button things up. Let's get a sip of water. And Brian's sayings are starting to become into my DNA as a podcaster now. So nevertheless, I appreciate you guys listening to today's episode, and we'll kick it over to the best producer in the biz, he's probably in the Appalachian Mountains since it's Friday, in his bunker getting ready for the weekend. That's a nice little getaway for the weekend there in the Appalachian Mountains. So, Mr. Producer, back to you, my friend.
L'Entrepreneur Academy Live 2021 is going to be the biggest and best one yet. And we want to see you Saturday, November 13th in Novi, Michigan. Join hundreds of entrepreneurs just like yourself who are looking to crush it in their business and make 2022 the most profitable year ever. This year's speakers are a who's who of the industry. Greg Whitstock, Corey Ballard, Keith Kalfas, Mark Parker, Caleb and Brittany Allman, Paver Pete, Brian and Liz Fullerton, and Jeff Joyner. Entrepreneur Academy Live 2021 is a powerful and inspiring all-day conference designed to help you take your business to the next level. And it's brought to you by Xmark, RedMax, SureTrack Trailers, and Yard Book. If you make it to town Friday, November the 12th, you're invited to hang out, network, and have a blast at the Full Throttle Adrenaline Park, brought to you by Toro's Horizon 360. Come ride endless laps on the high-powered go-karts, play virtual reality games, and win great prizes. Excited about bringing your spouse to the event? Discounted spouse tickets are available. Excited about bringing your whole crew? Group discounts of 4 or more also available. Do whatever you have to do to make it to L'Entrepreneur Academy Live 2021 and grab your tickets before they're sold out. Tickets will go fast, so if you'd like to get more information, visit us at l'entrepreneuracademy.com or use the link in the show description and follow along with the hashtag LAL 2021.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered Podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.
This has been a Brian Fullerton and Mr. Producer production.